Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a genuinely terrifying narrative today. It's a story that explores how a totally normal, everyday situation can just spiral into pure nightmare fuel. We're going to break down the anatomy of a haunting, specifically the cursed temple of Shivpur. And look, whether you're a hardcore believer in the supernatural or you just appreciate a real masterclass in psychological tension, watching how this environment slowly, methodically traps its victim is absolutely fascinating. So can one wrong turn literally destroy your life? Picture this scenario. It's 2 a.m. A guy named Ramu is driving alone, urgently trying to reach the village of Shivpur for some office work. He got a super late start, he's never been there before, and now he's stuck on this razor-thin, deserted road, flanked by these massive, dense trees on both sides. It honestly feels less like a road and more like he's driving right through the heart of an endless forest. He keeps checking the signs, they definitely point to Shivpur, but there's absolutely no village in sight. Just endless, suffocating darkness right beyond his headlights. Fast forward a bit. The clock hits 2:30 a.m. and Ramu realizes something highly unsettling. He's been driving straight for an hour, but the exact same trees keep passing by his window. It's like the road is endlessly looping. The isolation out there is totally deafening. And you know that heavy, creeping fatigue you get on late-night drives? It's starting to set in. His eyes are getting so heavy. He figures he still has maybe 20 or 30 kilometers to go. So to fight off the sleep and break that oppressive silence, he makes a completely normal decision. He reaches over and turns on the car radio for a little company. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the environment itself begins to actively toy with him. The radio crackles to life, and the host introduces himself as RJ Rocky. Rocky notes that it's 2:30 a.m., it's getting cold out, and hey, it's the perfect time for a terrifying horror story based on true events. Ramu is annoyed. He's got a headache, he's frustrated by this looping road, and he just wants some music. But then RJ Rocky tells his listeners to buckle up and get ready for this ride of fear. And the story unfolding on the broadcast begins to perfectly and horrifyingly mirror Ramu's exact real-life situation of driving completely alone on a dark, endless road. Ramu's just trying to ignore it, right? He's splitting his focus between the super creepy broadcast and the hypnotic lines on the road. And then, out of absolute pitch-black darkness, illuminated for maybe a fraction of a second by his headlights, a woman holding a wooden stick appears directly in front of his car. It happens so incredibly fast that Ramu panics, loses his balance, and just slams on the brakes. The car screeches to a dead halt. Heart pounding, he immediately checks the rearview mirror. But the road behind him? It's completely empty. She just vanished. No trace at all. This sequence right here shows us exactly how Ramu is being systematically trapped. It's so calculated. Step 1, Ramu tries to turn the key, but the car is completely dead. His breathing starts getting really heavy. Step 2, the radio, pretty much acting on its own now, broadcasts a horrifying update. The voice literally says, "And this is how that man's car stopped on the lonely road." Think about that. It knows exactly what just happened. Step 3, the radio starts blasting the loud ringing of temple bells, and then it just shuts off entirely. But here's the kicker. The sound of the bells doesn't stop. The ringing shifts. It's now coming from outside the car, luring him deep into the dense woods to his right. Driven by that desperate, panicked logic, where there are temple bells, there have to be people, and people mean help, Ramu grabs his phone. He flicks on the flashlight, steps out of the broken-down car, and ventures right into those pitch-black woods. As he's pushing through the trees, he gets this overwhelming, suffocating sensation that he's being watched, like every single step is being monitored. Then, suddenly, something heavy drops from the branches above, landing right at his feet. He slowly, shakily lowers his flashlight to the ground. And guys, the source text is completely blunt here. It was a ball, and it was dripping with fresh blood. At this point, Ramu's hands are trembling violently. With pure dread just washing over him, he slowly angles his phone's flashlight up into the dense canopy of the trees. And what he sees up there completely freezes his body. The text describes his very soul trembling. Tears are just streaming down his face. He is so utterly paralyzed by the ghastly, horrific entities lurking up in those branches that he can't even force his mouth open to scream. And then, the dead silence of the forest is totally shattered, as all those entities above him suddenly erupt into loud, hysterical, mocking laughter. Notice this stark sensory manipulation going on here. It's brilliant, but terrifying. On one side, you have this chaotic, echoing laughter in the dark woods that is literally paralyzing Ramu with fear. But on the other side, piercing right through that horrible laughter, is the rhythmic, structured ringing of those temple bells. It acts like a beacon. To Ramu's panicked mind, those bells offer this false sense of hope, order, and a safe sanctuary. So mustering every single ounce of adrenaline he has left, he breaks out of his paralysis and just blindly sprints toward the sound of the bells, desperate to escape the woods. He bursts out of the tree line and into this large clearing. The ringing suddenly stops. Right in the center sits a small building with a sign that reads, Deity's Temple. He's so relieved. He thinks he can just hide inside here until morning. He takes a step toward it. But abruptly, a stone flies out of the darkness and hits his arm. He recoils in agonizing pain and looks over. There's a villager standing off in the distance, and the man shouts this breathless, desperate warning. Don't go there. I am from Shivpur. That temple is cursed. If you go towards it, you will be killed. Ramu is terrified and honestly totally confused. He yells back at the man, how do I know you aren't one of those things from the forest? The villager replies that he's alive, but if Ramu really wants proof, he just needs to look behind the temple. Ramu slowly, hesitantly turns his head back toward his so-called sanctuary, and the sight leaves him absolutely stunned. There, in the shadows completely surrounding the temple, are souls. Countless spirits of young children and the elderly, just standing perfectly still, staring unblinking right at Ramu. The woods weren't the trap. The trap was waiting for him to step inside that temple. Let's move on and see how this builds into the broader lore of the region. Ramu actually manages to flee with the villager back to his home, where the man explains the grim history of this place. Decades ago, this was a holy site. The entire village had gathered for a joyous Mahapuja festival. But at 8 p.m., a child made a fatal, careless mistake. Just 15 minutes later, a massive fire erupted, completely engulfing the entire temple pandal. Innocent people, so many children, burned to death. That tragedy permanently cursed the grounds. Now, the temple actively lures nighttime travelers with phantom bells, drawing them in so those trapped souls can claim them. So the crucial point is really the terrifying aftermath of all this. Ramu stays at the villager's house, and at the very first light of dawn, he finds his car on the road and immediately flees back to his city. He makes a solemn vow to never, ever even think of Shivpur again. But the real tragedy here? Escaping the physical location absolutely does not mean escaping the curse. Ramu's life is forever altered. To his dying day, he's plagued by horrific nightmares of burning children, and even worse, whenever he sits in a completely quiet room, he can still hear the phantom ringing of those temple bells. We've explored the anatomy of a real haunting today, from the endlessly looping road to the psychological manipulation of a late-night radio show, all the way to the tragic historical fire that birthed a curse. This story leaves us with an incredibly stark reminder of just how thin the veil between safety and supernatural terror truly is. It forces us to think about those moments when we're driving alone in the dead of night, seeking just a little comfort in a simple radio broadcast. So, I leave you with this final thought. If you were driving alone at 2:30 a.m. and you hear RJ Rocky on the radio promising a ride of fear, what will you do? Keep your eyes on the road. Thanks for joining today's Explainer.